What is up, everybody? Yellowstone Wolf here, and in this video, we're going to be doing something controversial for a change. We're going to be talking about aliens, interdimensional entities, UFOs, UAPs, all that good stuff. And the reason why I decided to do this video is because, in all honesty, I haven't heard anybody really talk about the facts and like what these things are. And I've always wanted to know, like, what the fuck are aliens? Okay, what is this idea of interdimensional entities? What are flying saucers? Why are these things here? Why have they been throughout our ancient cultures, like all over the globe for millennia? What is going on here? And so I did hours and hours, hundreds of hours of investigation and research. I've done hundreds of hours of meditation. Okay, I've investigated almost every single nook and cranny of ancient civilizations and the common things that they had, the things they had in common, the common threads in all of their mythologies and yada yada yada. And I finally got an answer. Woo! Everybody, I got an answer, and it really revolves all around shamanism. How about that, eh? The oldest religion in the world is the right religion. How about that, eh? And what I mean by right religion is that it's actually like the root of all religions. Shamanism is the root of all religions because it understands what reality is and how it works and why it works the way that it does. Okay? So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the shamanic understanding of aliens, interdimensional entities, UFOs, UAPs, and how all these things interrelate. Okay? So hopefully I've given you plenty to chew on as I move on. All right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint presentation here and get started, shall we? So let's begin with the idea that you have to understand that when it comes to ETs, when it comes to extraterrestrials, aliens, interdimensional entities, whatever you want to call it there, when it comes to all that stuff, you have to understand that these things are like multiple layers deep. Okay, we're talking about things like sacred sites. Okay, the UFOs, UAPs, aliens, non-human intelligences are often associated with sacred sites. Okay, they're often associated with doorways or portals of energy, or hyperdimensional gateways or stargates. Okay, we're also talking about like psychic phenomena here. Okay, shape-shifting, levitation, telekinesis, telepathy. Okay, all of these things are interrelated, just like ghosts and ancestor spirits, okay, or the spirits of the planet. Okay, all of these things interrelate with one another. Okay, and the common ground, the common intersection where they all meet, where they all interrelate, is consciousness. Okay, yes, consciousness. Okay, and what is consciousness? Well, I'd like to explain quite simply what consciousness is. Consciousness is energy. Okay, well, what is energy, Jake? Everybody knows that everything is energy, but what is energy? Well, energy is light resonating on all frequencies of vibration, creating a whole that is greater than the sum of all of its parts. Okay, so energy or consciousness is basically all things wrapped into a single package, creating a conscious whole that is greater than the sum of all of the infinite things within itself. Okay? And so that's what consciousness is, that's what energy is, and that's why all of these phenomena that are these seemingly different masks are all interrelating and meeting at the same intersection, at the same crossroads, which is consciousness. Who made that, eh? The thing, the glue that connects all species, which is mind, consciousness, the soul. That is the crossroads. That is the medium or the meeting point for which all of this phenomena intersects and interrelates. Okay? So with that said, let's move on, shall we? This archetype of the gray alien is an archetype that has been pervasive throughout all of our ancient cultures, but it is not the only archetype that is pervasive throughout all our ancient cultures. Okay? So with that said, We're going to move on. Come on then. I pressed the button. Okay, there we go. So it's important to understand that in order to comprehend how all this ET stuff works, in order to like really grasp how this interdimensional stuff works, you have to keep in mind that all of reality is based off of a single fractal design. Okay, and the single fractal design is the tetrahedron structure of space and the flower of life field of the soul. Okay, so it is the two of these, matter and mind, or physical and metaphysical, both of these things layering on top of one another to create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, right? That creates all reality. Okay, now at the center of every single fractal flower of life tetrahedron pattern is this pattern here. Okay, it is called the vector equilibrium. And the vector equilibrium is basically made when two equally powerful forces meet and collide. And because they're equally powerful, they basically just start rotating around one another. And they create a stable structure in space and time. This stable structure in the dimensions of space and time is called a vector equilibrium. And as these equally powerful forces rotate around another, this is called the double torus field. Okay, it's because it's these two bulls locking horns, two toruses locking horns and spinning around each other. Okay, it is this double torus energy that is creating this hyperdimensional energy field. Okay, so at the core of all things is the hyperdimensional energy that we just spoke of. Okay, and it is at the core of all frequencies, of all vibrations. All right, and it is what makes up all of reality. All right, and reality is nothing more than numerous different vector equilibriums and double torus fields layered on top of one another in different hyperdimensional layers of energy. So there's going to be a 12th dimensional layer, or 12th dimensional vector equilibrium and double torus field that ends up creating all the other 11 dimensions below it. Okay, and all based off of the same math, based off of the same structure, which is the double torus field flower of life tetrahedron structure. Okay, so hopefully I've explained that well enough to move on. Now, if you want a little bit more in-depth analysis on this, or an in-depth explanation, I highly recommend you check out my God is Real and Reincarnation is Physics video, because that one it is quite mind-blowing, and I'm very proud of it, very much indeed. Okay, there's all sorts of wonderful things in that video. If you haven't checked it out, by all means check it out if you want to look into this idea of hyperdimensional energy and the idea of the fractal nature of reality and how it all interrelates. Okay, so with that said, I'm moving on. So in order to understand the extraterrestrial, alien, UAP, UFO, paranormal activity type phenomena, we have to understand that what we're talking about here is the movement of energy. Okay, the movement of energy through space and time, through the dimensions of space and time. And because this energy is conscious, okay, because this energy is conscious as it moves through space and time, it ends up creating different physical bodies that embody this consciousness. Okay, and as that process unfolds, as the energy moves through the feedback, or through the universe and back to itself, through the dimensions of space and time and back to source, this is what we call the life and death cycle. Okay, and all organisms experience it. Everybody, we all get going back to source at some point. So when it comes to UAPs, when it comes to UFOs, when it comes to aliens, when it comes to interdimensional entities, we have to remember that it all relates to consciousness, and thusly it relates to the life and death cycle. And in order to understand what star knowledge is, what our who our star ancestors were, why they were here, what exactly it is that they were trying to do when life got started on this planet, etc., you have to understand the life and death cycle, and you have to understand the laws of physics and the way that reality works. And it all works based off of same fractal geometry like I explained before. Okay, it's actually quite simple. But what's happened is that we've had numerous different veils put in front of our minds and in front of our eyes to obscure the truth, to cloud reality as it actually is. And if you want a little on that, I suggest you watch my Take the Red Pill video. Trust me on that, that's a good one. That one really goes into depth as to how all of these veils have been put in front of our eyes, put in front of our minds to cover up the truth about reality and our own potential as living spiritual beings of infinite potential. So moving on. Did you know that the pineal gland becomes visible in the human fetus at 49 days? Which is the number of days in which it takes the soul to reincarnate according to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So this 49-day process of all the different phases that you have to go through after you die is the exact, it parallels the exact same amount of time that it takes for a human fetus to develop, and for the pineal gland, the gland that's in the center of your brain, okay, that's called the third eye, okay, for this thing to develop in the fetus and for DMT to be excreted in the fetus for the first time. Now, it is my assertion that when the DMT is excreted in the pineal gland of the fetus at 49 days, that is the incarnation of the soul into the flesh and form, okay? And it's because it takes 49 days to go through all of the phases, all the bardos after the death process, okay? So why is this 49-day thing, what's up with that? 7 times 7, that's interesting, huh? We'll get back to that in a little bit. But this whole idea of the 49 days paralleling each other with the death cycle and the life cycle. What is that? Well, what that is, ladies and gentlemen, is something that I call the feedback loop of light and information, okay? Now, bear with me here while I read this. Vibration, or animation, being alive, occurs when the frequency of an exciting external source, in this case, they're saying sunlight, matches the natural frequency of an animate or of a physical being. This is the condition of resonance. So according to what this is saying, this A+ here could be considered sunlight, and this B- here could be considered the human body or the human mind, okay? And all these different frequencies, all these different colors and waves are all the different frequencies of light that are being sent from the sun to human eyes and mind and back again, over and over and over again. Okay, and this is the condition of resonance. This is what creates our perception of life and reality. Okay, now I'm going to go a step further. All right, I'm going to say that this A+ here is actually something like the energy that we were talking about earlier, this hyperdimensional energy that is a whole greater than the sum of its parts. For the sake of argument, we'll just say that it's 12th dimensional omnipresent energy. Okay, and this 12th dimensional omnipresent energy is permeating all of the different dimensions all the way down to the first and back again with itself based on its same fractal geometric structure like we talked about before, okay? And so all of these different wavelengths here, all of these different frequencies are essentially the different frequencies or octaves that light can resonate on and create matter in space and time. Okay, and what we call reality is the conglomeration of all of these different atoms and molecules and all these things working themselves out and being perceived by our mind and our bodies, and that information being sent back to this hyperdimensional energy source that is at the core of all beings, as I said before. Okay, the heart here is the center of our vector equilibrium in our body. We'll get to that a little bit later. Oh, burp. Oh, excuse me. So humanity is essentially a being with a hyperdimensional consciousness. Okay, so we might as well have hyperdimensional consciousness here and hyperdimensional consciousness here, and all of the infinite frequencies and resonances and vibrations and all that stuff of all the universe is being sent and received by this hyperdimensional consciousness. So basically what we're looking at here is self-reflection. We're looking at like a cosmic self-reflective process, okay? So with that said, all of these different frequencies are like different atoms or different atomic bonds and stuff like that in space and time. All right. Now, if we look at this red line here, for example, and we say that this, we'll just say for the sake of argument that this red line here is this pattern down here, this triangular pattern looking here. Okay. Now, this triangular pattern here is a pattern created through something called cymatics. If you don't know what cymatics is, you can look into it. It's basically the use of frequency and sound to manipulate matter, okay? To manipulate matter to create certain patterns in space and time. Now, because this frequency is based off of harmonics, it is also based off of mathematics. And as it moves through the feedback loop of light and information, as it goes through the feedback loop and back to source again, it has a very specific mathematical signature that creates a very specific mathematical pattern in the dimensions of space and time. Okay, so what we're looking at here and with all these cymatic patterns essentially is a two-dimensional representation of a 3 or 4th dimensional or 5th dimensional field. Okay, so what we're talking about here is a hyperdimensional field that is manipulating matter to create certain patterns in space and time. Now, if we were to look at these two-dimensional patterns as three-dimensional fields, then maybe this, maybe this triangular pattern here would turn into this pyramid pattern here. Okay, and maybe some of like this square looking pattern here would manifest as a cube here. Okay, and so on and so forth. Now, as the frequency heightens, this is where it gets really interesting. As the frequency heightens, as the frequency gets higher and higher and higher in its resonance, the patterns end up becoming more and more and more complex, which means that the three-dimensional fields that are creating them are also getting more and more and more complex. Okay, and as these fields get more and more complex, they manipulate matter in different ways, okay, creating different elements. Okay, and the conglomeration or the mixing together of different patterns, these here are called platonic solids, by the way. If you don't know what a platonic solid is, it's basically the fundamental sacred geometric structure of all reality, and these platonic solids were rediscovered by Plato, but they've been around for millennia. You have to, like, these are like the fundamental basis of all reality. Okay, so Plato just kind of rediscovered them and reintroduced them to the ancient Greeks. So that's why we call them platonic solids. Now, no matter what way you hold each and every one of these shapes, it is the exact same shape. Just like a sphere. If you were to hold a sphere in your hand, it doesn't matter which way you hold it, it's still a sphere. Okay, just like a cube. It doesn't matter which way you hold a cube, it's the same shape. Okay, and it is all of these shapes, all of these hyperdimensional fields that are creating the elements and molecules and atoms and all that stuff based off of frequencies and quarks and all that. It's how all these things interrelate and intersect and interconnect with one another that creates all of reality as we're experiencing it. Okay, and our body is made up of all of these elements. Wow, right? Okay, so with all that said, I hope I've explained that well enough to move on. Okay, what is happening here? This feedback loop is essentially what this whole idea of Ouroboros is all about. Okay, and that's why this image has been just pushed by ancient cultures for millennia. Okay, now why is this happening? What is up with this Ouroboros of energy? Why is consciousness folding in on itself over and over and over again in this way? Okay, and it's because what is happening is every time energy goes through the feedback loop of light and information and back to source again and again, every time that happens, the universe is going through a metamorphosis process and becoming a grander and grander version of itself, a more awake, a more aware, a more loving, more sincere, a more compassionate, something with more care, okay, being each and every moment. Okay, so the Ouroboros of energy, this feedback loop of light and information, is creating a spiritual metamorphosis of sorts that is constantly creating a better, more evolved version of the self, or of this hyperdimensional consciousness that is the whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. Okay, and what ends up happening is that as this process unfolds, not only does that growth, not only does all the growth from all the dimensions, like say from the first dimension all the way up to the 12th, not only does all that growth get contributed to this 12th dimensional consciousness, but then that 12th dimensional consciousness can end up becoming something like a 13th dimensional consciousness. Okay? So with that said, hopefully you grasp this idea of this feedback loop, light and information, the idea that it's all based off of the same fractal geometry, the idea that this Ouroboros is essentially the universe informing itself, or it basically is a self-reflective, self-informing process. Okay? Well, you hear that synchronicity? That's my clock going off. All right, so with that said, what we're talking about here is standing waves when it comes to what we're talking about here in this feedback loop of light and information is the creation of numerous different standing waves. Okay, so as information travels through the feedback loop of light and information and back again, okay, it's creating what is called an interference pattern, or a standing wave. Now, standing wave is what happens when two equally powerful rivers, or double torus fields, two equally powerful rivers converge and meet one another and become one river. Now, as they become that one river, there is a wave in the center that is called a standing wave. Okay? And this standing wave, right, is something that we call a physical human body or a planet or a sun or yada, yada, yada. Okay? So, now, there's numerous ways that this can be looked at, okay? So this energy moving through the feedback loop of light and information can be looked at numerous different ways. It can be looked at as energy coming from the cosmic to the quantum, and from the quantum to the cosmic, or it can be viewed as energy moving from the future to the past and past to the future. And if you don't believe that energy can move from the future to the past, I suggest you look into tachyons, because tachyons are subatomic quantum particles that travel backward through what we perceive as time. Okay, so energy can move from the future to the past, and just as energy is moving from the past to the future. Okay, and in the process, a standing wave is created in the center here. Okay, so as energy, or hyperdimensional spirit, whatever you want to call it, moves through the feedback loop into our bodies and back again, okay, we're creating a standing wave of energy. Okay, and here at the heart, here at the center is our heart. Okay, so our heart is like the center of the universe. The universe is an infinite sphere whose circumference is, whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. Try that again. The universe is an infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. Okay, so yes, you are the center of the universe. You are the center of your universe. Take responsibility for it. With that said, let's move on. So what we're talking about here is this idea of standing waves, energy moving through the feedback loop of light and information, is something that is happening on a hyperdimensional scale, okay? From like a 12th dimensional scale to an 11th dimensional scale, okay? To a 10th dimensional scale, to something like maybe a 9th, okay? Getting all the way down to the 7th and the 8th, and all the way down to the 3rd dimension of reality. Okay, so this fractal geometric nature to our reality is creating numerous different standing waves in space and time. Okay, and these numerous different standing waves in space and time are like different octaves, okay, in the pattern of creation, in the harmonies of creation. Okay, so human beings are essentially like a vessel for this hyperdimensional divine consciousness, as explained before. Okay, and what we're looking at when we look out into the stars and we see the Milky Way and all those stars in front of us, what we're looking at is a hyperdimensional version of the feedback loop of light and information. Okay, and that's why it blows our minds. That's why we have all these stories about, the stars and all the stuff that goes on in the heavens and star beings and all that kind of stuff, okay? Because the cosmos is conscious, you guys. The cosmos is conscious, just like, guess what? The Earth is conscious, the solar system, the sun, our galaxy, the multiverse itself, it's conscious, okay? And we embody that consciousness. Okay, and the more conscious of it we become, then the more of it we embody. Okay, so what is moving energy from these really, really high frequency, hyperdimensional standing waves of energy in space and time? What is moving them from this hyperdimensional state all the way down to us? What's moving it is vortexes of energy. Now, a vortex is a constantly spinning, constantly rotating flow of energy that is basically it's the double torus field, like I explained before. Okay, and remember how our reality is comprised of numerous different double torus fields and hyperdimensional scales, things that we call galaxies and stars. These are just vortexes. These are just hyperdimensional vortexes and portals for energy, for consciousness. Okay, so what we're talking about here essentially is the movement of energy through the feedback loop of light and information based on numerous different standing waves being created at different hyperdimensional levels of reality. And these different hyperdimensional levels of reality create different levels of consciousness and conscious beings. Okay? So yes, the universe is conscious. Yes, our planet is conscious. Yes, the sun is conscious. All the planets are conscious. Our ancestors knew this a long time ago. Okay, trust me. That's why they had this like mythology of like the gods and stuff like that, because they understood the idea that the planets were conscious. Okay, that the universe itself is conscious of itself. Okay, and it moves energy through the dimensions of space and time, through the feedback loop of light and information based on harmonics, through the use of vortexes of varying different sizes and scales. Okay, and these vortexes are basically just the movement of energy through the feedback loop and back to source again. Okay, so this is kind of where we get into this whole idea of stargates, okay? This is where we get into this whole idea of extraterrestrial intelligences, okay? Because if our planet is conscious, then is it possible that maybe, just maybe, we might be communicating with our planetary consciousness as much as we're communicating with beings from Zeta Reticuli or something? So what's important to understand is that these vortexes are causing everything to spin. Everything in the universe is all based off of spin. It's all based off of the movement of energy through the feedback loop of light and information. Okay? That's why we have the sacred spiral pattern, the Fibonacci spiral pattern, on all scales of existence, you guys. Whether it be storms and hurricanes, tornadoes, the shape of a wave, of a whirlpool, of aloe vera, of broccoli, of a shell, of a seed, of our DNA, of an atom, of our galaxy, of our solar system, of the multiverse itself. It's all spinning because energy is flowing through all of it. Conscious energy, the conscious energy of God, is flowing through all of it. Okay? So, with that said, what is happening then here on this planet is that the feedback loop of light and information, which is essentially, energy being sent through the feedback loop of light and information, creating a standing wave, right? Numerous different octaves, numerous different frequencies, numerous different standing waves of hyperdimensional energy, okay? And these numerous different frequencies and octaves of hyperdimensional energy are creating and coalescing different cosmic bodies, and eventually they create a plane of consciousness that physical beings, human beings, i.e. human beings, can operate on. That basically this hyperdimensional consciousness can house a body or an antenna for this signal of this hyperdimensional awareness. Okay? So the feedback loop of light and information is hyperdimensional energy going to hyperdimensional energy and back again in this self-reflective process. And it is creating a standing wave or a plane of consciousness in our case, where there are conscious beings, like an infinite amount of conscious beings, interestingly enough, Okay, like there's, you know, not just humans here, right? We have life forms all the way down to tardigrades, for Christ's sake, and all the way up to our planetary consciousness. Okay, so these planes of consciousness have beings that are also like standing waves. Our body is a standing wave in the cosmic ocean. Okay, and it is a self-aware standing wave in the cosmic ocean. Okay, now interestingly enough, what makes this reality that we perceive, okay, is the layering, as I said before, of numerous different frequencies of energy, or numerous different platonic solids layering on top of one another. In the case of fire, that's the tetrahedron. In the case of the hexahedron, we have earth. Octahedron, we have air. The icosahedron, we have water. And the dodecahedron, we have ether. Okay? And how all of these things interrelate, how they all intersect, how they all intertwine, how they all create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, is what is basically creating human existence, what's creating our reality. Okay, so human beings are all of these things combined to create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, just like a sunflower is, just like a galaxy is. Okay, it's all based off of the double torus field. It's all based off of the flower of life pattern and the movement of energy through the feedback loop of light and information based off of the flow of energy through vortexes in space and time. Okay, so human beings are essentially like a standing wave of energy. Okay, and we embody the flower of life tetrahedron pattern with our chakras and our auric field. Okay, so essentially human beings are like a fractal version, or like a standing wave of the universe. We are like antenna for this universal mind, for this collective conscious mind. Okay, this oneness of all things. Okay, it's like the most advanced possible technology you could possibly imagine. Okay, and it's like, it's so deeply interwoven with like the harmonics of reality and the harmonics of the universe and all that stuff that it in many cases it's beyond most people's comprehension. Okay, but notice here we have the tetrahedron pattern. Okay, we have that, and obviously the star pattern, the 5-star pattern is something that is pervasive throughout all ET life forms. Okay, so with that said, the human body is like a physical standing wave of energy in space and time. Okay, and our body is comprised of the elements of the earth. So the elements of the earth and water comprised into this standing wave of energy that is conscious of itself. Okay, so with that said, what is sending the frequency? What is sending this blueprint? How do we get a life form, and how do we get this frequency being here on this planet? Like, how does this stuff work? Like, okay, I get it, it's all based off of the same fractal geometry and all that stuff, but like, how does this account for extraterrestrials? How does this account for interdimensional entities? How does this account for star knowledge and star beings and all that stuff? Allow me to explain. So the feedback loop of light and information is, as I said before, something that's happening on a hyperdimensional scale. Okay, which means that there's numerous different levels and numerous different layers of energy that are layering on top of one another to create this whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. Okay, which means that numerous different quote unquote races or numerous different frequencies of energy are going to be funneled through the vortex that we call our sun. Okay, and as the frequencies that are getting funneled through this vortex are permeated out into our solar system, okay, those light codes are then sent to the planets. Okay, and the planets then are like receivers. They're almost like antenna in and of themselves, right? They're different octaves for the feedback loop of light and information. They're like different octaves for this information to come in, right? And for conscious awareness, conscious experience to be embodied. Okay, now with that said, it's really important to grasp something. Okay, it's important to understand the way that light can end up affecting DNA. So there was this experiment done, and if you want, you can look into David Wilcock's book. I believe it's called The Ascension Mysteries, where he talks about how it is that light was able to be used to reprogram the DNA of frog eggs to turn them into salamander eggs. Yes, and these salamanders could actually like grow into adulthood and like procreate with other salamanders, when originally they started out as frog eggs. And how was this done? This was done through the use of lasers and genetics. Okay, whereby the genetic code that was in the DNA of a salamander was transferred to an egg of a frog, and this egg of the frog ended up receiving this light code and this light information, and it changed the DNA on like a molecular level, frequency, energy, light, frequency, vibration. I hope it's all syncing up. Changed it on a molecular level to where now that frog egg could be converted into a salamander egg. Who made that, eh? Who made that? So that is huge. That is so huge, because that basically means that we are our genetic codes, who we are, our energy essence is like a frequency, not a physical body. Whoa, that's huge. In order to understand extraterrestrials, in order to understand interdimensional entities, in order to understand UFOs, UAPs, and all that stuff, you have to understand that you are a frequency of consciousness. You are not just a physical body. You are a frequency of consciousness that is housed in and around a physical body. Okay, and it is the movement of energy through the feedback loop of light and information that is creating your body on like a quantum and cosmic scale. Okay, so as energy moves from the cosmic hyperdimensional doorways and gateways through all these other lower dimensional frequencies and doorways into your physical body and back to source again, okay, as this process unfolds, you are the standing wave of the concrescence of the universal mind. You are like the cutting edge of the universal mind. This is huge. You're like you're all of the millions upon millions upon millions of billions of years of history of the cosmos fractalized into a little tiny grain of sun we call a human body. Who made that, eh? All right, so essentially, the human being, what we are, is a being of frequency, okay? And the physical body that we have here on this planet is comprised of the elements and the, H2O, the elements of the earth, being concretized into a single package that is a whole greater than the sum of its parts. What do I mean by that? Well, all the organs are working together as, little parts, but the whole of all of them working together creates a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, i.e. human consciousness. Okay? You can't live without all of your organs, right? So, what is it exactly that is bringing these frequencies? And it is the sun. Yes, whether or not you know it, the sun is a portal for hyperdimensional energy. It is a space travel based on sacred geometry. Okay, what we are talking about is the movement of conscious beings. Okay, the movement of consciousness. Okay, beings based on different octaves of awareness and self-reflection being embodied and housed in different physical bodies, okay? And the method of getting this conscious energy, this consciousness, this being from this hyperdimensional state of, say, 11th dimensional consciousness down to earth is done through what we call the sun, or this vortex here, this hyperdimensional vortex of energy. Okay, and if you don't believe that there's stuff coming out of the sun, that our sun is actually like a portal, then look at some of these pictures, man. Look at this here. This is like a UFO that's coming in, like taking energy from the sun. This is like a being taking energy from the sun. Okay, this is like an ancient, I think it was like Mayan or Aztec plate or something like that. They have the sun, they have Earth, they have UFOs and starships and stuff. And now notice they out of the sun, they have this UFO looking thing coming. Okay? Notice, okay? The sun is a vortex of energy. It is a hyperdimensional vortex for energy. Conscious energy. Okay, this is huge. This is huge. I'll explain why in a little bit. Okay, it's just really important to understand that if consciousness is a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, and it is fractalizing itself throughout all the different dimensions of reality based off of the same fractal structure, and it's doing so creating different levels or octaves of consciousness, then that means that our sun is conscious. That means that all of our planets are conscious. Okay, that means that they are as conscious of themselves as we are. Okay, so with that understanding, check this out. All right, this is the sun's tone. This is the sun's frequency, plotted out cymatically. Okay, now if you look, we have here at the center the sun, obviously, and all of these concentric rings around it. What are these rings, Jake? Well, allow me to explain. You see, look at Mercury here. If you see Mercury's pattern is very, very similar to the sun's pattern, then it would make sense why, considering how close Mercury's frequency or how close Mercury's body is to the sun. It's like right next to it. So of course it's going to embody a frequency that is very much like the sun's frequency. Notice the little like barbs and stuff you got on here. You got these little barbs here, the concentric rings, right? Concentric rings. All right. Now, notice here we have Venus. Okay, so Venus obviously is much different than Mercury because, you know, they're totally different portions of the solar system. Okay, so basically Venus is occupying a different octave of the solar vortex's frequency range, of the feedback loop of light and information that is creating our sun in this hyperdimensional plane of existence that we call the solar system. Okay, the Venus, the Earth, okay, Jupiter, Mars, all of it, these are all different octaves in our solar system. Okay, this is huge. This is huge. Okay, because what does this mean? What this means is this, and if you really want to understand extraterrestrial life, you have to grok this. Okay, if this is Earth's frequency is, for example, is right here. Okay, what is creating our physical bodies on this plane of consciousness, on this hyperdimensional frequency, on this hyperdimensional field of consciousness? What is creating our bodies is the exact same laws of physics that created the planet, the sun, the galaxy, everything, the universe itself. Okay, so the standing wave of the physical human body is based off of the laws of physics as they permeate all of the galaxy, as they permeate all of the solar system. Okay, being like compressed and concretized to our physical plane of existence, and then the Earth's elements, namely H2O and all the other elements, are then comprised into a package, a conscious package, a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, with a hyperdimensional field of consciousness that we call an aura, okay, or an electromagnetic field, or a consciousness field. Okay, now if we go to somewhere like Venus, Venus is not made of water the way that Earth is, but that doesn't mean that there isn't life on Venus that isn't based off of something like, say, sulfur or silica. Okay, just because we are carbon H2O based life forms here on planet Earth doesn't mean that on Venus they're all carbon based H2O based life forms. Okay, if the same laws of physics that created our bodies here on Earth are the same laws of physics that created Venus, then it seems to me only a matter of course that there would be beings, frequency beings. Remember, we are frequencies of consciousness, much more than we are our physical bodies. Okay, then to me it would just make sense that there would be beings of frequency and consciousness on Venus who maybe have bodies that don't look the way that ours does, because it's not based off of H2O. It's not based off of the minerals and the elements of the Earth. Okay, it's not carbon-based, but that doesn't mean that there isn't life there. That doesn't mean that this self-reflective, hyperdimensional consciousness process, this growth process that all of the universe is based off of, all of a sudden stops when it gets to Venus and just starts right up when it gets to Earth. Doesn't make very much sense, does it? Doesn't make so much sense at all. The life is everywhere, everywhere. All cultures have said everything is alive. All cultures have said everything has a spirit. The only culture that hasn't, modern materialist culture, which in many cases is based off of like things like modern materialism, Darwinism, okay, which by the way, Darwin was into the dark side of the occult, okay? He was into, you know, all sorts of like Luciferian satanic stuff, okay? So the idea of life existing on other planes or other worlds is only a matter of course when we understand what life actually is. And life is the conscious energy of the cosmos, the whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, being moved through the feedback loop of light and information, going from different frequencies and different planes or different octaves of self-awareness and back to self again, back to source again. Okay? So Mars is not as anywhere near as a complex of a frequency as something like Venus. And if we go to something like Jupiter, look at that frequency. Now it would make sense why Jupiter is associated with all of the highest frequencies of humanity. Things like, you know, justice, things like love, things like friendship, things like strength, perseverance, freedom, everything that makes humans good, you can pretty much associate with Jupiter, okay? So it would make sense why humanity associates all of our best attributes with Jupiter, because whether or not you know it, everything is interconnected. Everything is intertwined with one another, which means that our physical bodies, our minds, and all that stuff, whether or not you know it, yes, it is connected to Jupiter, just like it's connected to Venus, just like it's connected to the moons and the moon cycles. Now it would make sense why it is that human social systems are so drastically affected by either the new or the full moons. Okay, because these frequencies of energy are what are affecting the planet Earth itself. And if it's affecting the planet Earth's frequency, you better believe it's affecting your frequency, okay? Now, this here is Sirius. This is the star system Sirius. Look at how high frequency that is. Now, remember what we were talking about higher octaves of consciousness, about other worlds, other planes of existence? All right, this is what we're talking about here. This is a higher dimensional plane of existence. And there's a reason why our ancient ancestors had ceremonies and had very specific rituals of sorts and plants they would consume at certain locations, sacred sites, when they would quote unquote worship or get in tune with this star frequency. Okay, which basically means that they were embodying this high octave frequency through the cosmic feedback loop and down to earth, through the sun, down to earth, into their physical bodies, so that they could essentially embody the collective consciousness of this star system. Whoa! So this is where this whole idea of, you know, star knowledge comes from. This whole idea of we come from the stars. This is where this idea comes from. But we're going to get into that in just a little bit, okay? Because it goes a whole lot deeper than everything I'm just saying right now. Okay, so ultimately what we have to understand is this. There are about this many atoms in your body. I don't even know what number that would be. There are about this many atoms in your body, all right? And all are billions of years old. And at the deepest level, you are the universe in human form. Okay? So, like I said, we are beings of consciousness. Okay? We are beings of frequency and energy before we are actually physical beings of reality. Okay? So, well, I should say we are beings of frequency and energy just as much as we are beings of physical reality. Because what's really interesting is that the human body, this conglomeration of all these atoms that are billions of years old and the universe representing itself as you, that's like an antenna for this hyperdimensional frequency, this hyperdimensional consciousness, this consciousness that is beyond the 12th dimension, okay? That is omnipresent, it's omniscient, it's omnipotent. Okay, and yes, you can tap into it. Yes, you're based on harmonics, and so is the universe. So all you have to do is harmonize with the universe. Now check this out. Milky Way has at least 46 billion Earth-sized planets, more than the total number of the grains of sand on all the Earth's beaches and deserts. And that is just in our galaxy. So if there's that many Earth-sized planets, just Earth-sized planets in our galaxy, and then we factor in the idea that essentially what creation is, what these planes of consciousness are essentially is vortexes of energy where life forms are able to be created, experience reality, and then sent back through the feedback loop back to source. Okay, when we really grasp that, we understand that like, hold on a second, life isn't just occupied to just Earth-based planets. Life is like able to go on all planets that have like this electromagnetic field that surrounds it, this consciousness field, this that makes it like an octave, a living octave of, you know, conscious reality. Wow, that, eh? That's some deep shit. So what's really important to keep in mind is that here on the Earth plane, we perceive reality based on less than 1% of the light spectrum, ladies and gentlemen. That means less than 1% of the light spectrum is the way that we see all of reality. And we're trying to extrapolate all sorts of like grand conclusions about the 99.9% when we're only perceiving less than 1% of that reality. Okay? So what that says to me is this, is that there are life forms on Venus, just like there are life forms on Jupiter. Okay, these life forms on Jupiter could be very well comprised of like crystalline electric storm structures that are conscious of themselves, moving around the gaseous vortex of the planet itself. It could be, you know, something like on Venus, we could have beings based entirely off of like sulfur or something like that. And the only reason why we can't perceive their physical body is because it is resonating just outside of this little spectrum here. They're like right here, and that means that we can't see them because they're not in here, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. That doesn't mean that they aren't as much of a reality as this little less than 1% is a reality for us. Okay? So essentially all of life, all of the planets, all of the stars, okay, is life being experienced in all of these different frequencies and octaves of resonance, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. So life is everywhere. The universe is alive. It's been alive. It's going to stay alive. All right? God is life. Life is God. God is consciousness. Consciousness is God. Okay? We are that being. We are that consciousness. Okay, and we have the opportunity to harmonize with all of these different frequencies, and we can ascend up the ladder of harmonic vibration. Okay, now how we do that is this, okay, through something called the self-replication of phi. Now, for those of you who know what phi is, good on you. For those of you who don't know what phi is PHI. It is the basic ratio for which all of reality and all of nature is based off of. It's what the Fibonacci spiral is based off of. It's what, you know, the tetrahedron is based off of. It's what all sacred geometric platonic solids are based off of. And essentially what it is this, okay? The universe, when the universe first started its feedback loop of light and information, it might as well have sent its conscious self, its self-aware consciousness, which is 1 phi, it sent that through the feedback loop and back again. And then guess what? It was aware. It had this self-reflective process that was like, oh yeah, wow, I am. Okay, so then another phi or another tetrahedron was stacked on top. Okay, and then this process kept happening and happening and happening over and over and over and over and over and over and over again as the energy moved through the feedback loop of light and information again and again and again and again and again. Okay, and it ends up like stacking on top of itself damn near infinitely. Okay, and it ends up creating, going from a first dimension to a second dimension to a third dimension to a fourth dimension to a fifth dimension. And as you can see, it just keeps going and going and going into these higher dimensional octaves of reality. Okay, so this is how this self-reflective process is happening on like a grander scale. Okay, and it is this self-reflective process that ETs, extraterrestrials, aliens, beings, non-human intelligences, they have tapped into this intelligence. They have tapped into this energetic source that is permeating all of creation. Okay? So it's really important to grasp how this all interrelates to what it is we were talking about before, okay? What we were talking about before was the idea that, come on now, I'm hitting the button. Why don't you work it? Come on, dude. What's going on here? There we go. Okay, going back. All right. So what we're talking about here is essentially that this is like basic human earth consciousness, okay? You hear my dog drinking? Good boy, Rodney. This is basically three-dimensional base earth consciousness. This is what most people in culture are at, okay? And what we're talking about is the shaman is like the guy that is here, or the gal that is here. Shamans are not men, or are both men and women. They're not one or the other. And then the aliens, the extraterrestrial intelligences, are like the hyperdimensional consciousness that are interrelating between this shaman and the normal average individual, okay? So it's almost like this is this serious, you know, plane of consciousness here, this hyperdimensional octave of consciousness that is higher and above the Gaia mind, the solar mind, the logos of our solar system, okay? This is a whole star system consciousness, okay? This here is kind of like this here, okay? Or like this here. And it is a plane of consciousness that is multiple different consciousnesses, multiple different frequencies or octaves of self-awareness comprised to create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts on that particular plane and dimension of reality, okay? And it is these hyperdimensional, highly intelligent, conscious beings, star beings, okay, that are aliens, that are what we see as unidentified aerial phenomena, or UFOs, okay? So with that said, it's really important to understand that this whole process is about the growth of harmonics. It's about the growth of this consciousness, this whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, this energy traveling to higher and higher octaves and higher dimensions of reality. So going beyond the 12th dimension and into the 13th, into the 14th, into the 15th, into the 16th, yada, yada, yada. Okay? It's this process going on over and over and over again. Now, what we have here is a magnet under something called ferrofluid. Okay? Now, what we're seeing here is numerous different pyramidal structure forms. Okay? These little cone forms. Now, the thing is, if we were to examine this image with a electromagnetic, what are they called, those freaking things? Oh my gosh, the thing the Monopoly guy has. Oh my gosh, you know what I'm talking about? Hey, you're an examiner like that. What you would see is a flower of life pattern, and then the flower of life pattern is creating these tetrahedrons, creating these versions of phi. Okay, now what the universe is doing is it is creating more and more of these versions of phi, as I explained here. Okay, the complexification, okay, becoming a grander and grander hyperdimensional state of awareness, okay, within each new octave, each new frequency of vibration is represented by a new pyramid or a new version of phi coming into existence as a plane of consciousness that it has beings on it that like are self-aware, okay, that are able to send and receive the feedback loop of light and information, okay? So the whole growth process of the entire multiverse as a whole is basically this process here happening to create a hyperdimensional being that goes up the harmonic scales, up the octaves, to create higher and higher frequencies, to create higher and higher dimensional realms of reality that are then inhabited by this consciousness, by conscious beings, and that send and receive the feedback loop over and over and over again, and create higher and higher hyperdimensional states of consciousness again and again and again. Okay? So how is this possible for humanity? Well, we don't just have 7 chakras. For those of you who know what the 7 chakra system is, Good on you. For those of you who don't, the 7 chakra system are the 7 vortexes that are in our body, the 7 spinning wheels of energy. Each of them corresponds with a different organ and with different gland systems and stuff like that in the body. So these vortexes actually have physical resonances that are responsible for regulating the physical organism itself as a whole. All of these harmonic frequencies working in conjunction with one another is what creates human consciousness, or this whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. Now, as we harmonize, as we get in tune with the harmonics of the universe, as we begin to embody these higher hyperdimensional states of consciousness, you know, like our ancient ancestors did through their star ceremonies and the understanding of the feedback loop and all that, okay? We end up harmonizing all of our chakras together, and then we end up creating a new chakra above the body that is like a harmonic resonance, a hyperdimensional harmonic resonance above the body. And then that process continues and continues and continues and continues up and up and up and up and up and up, what I call the Jacob's ladder to heaven. Okay, now as this process unfolds, as you harmonize more and more and more with these higher octaves, these higher frequencies, these star systems, as you embody the feedback loop of star systems, essentially is what I'm saying, then you end up expanding your aura. You end up expanding the circumference of the universe. Remember, the universe is an infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. You end up expanding the circumference of your universe to embody larger and larger amounts of the universe by harmonizing your frequency with the octaves of star systems, whether that be our star system, like as in our sun or our planet, or the star system of something like Sirius or the Orion Nebula or something like that. Okay, ultimately what we're talking about is the embodying of these octaves. Okay, what we're talking about is the embodying of this type of a frequency right here, this really high frequency being channeled through the sun and the sun's vortex down to you here on the earth, in the earth's frequency, right? And thusly your physical body, your auric field, right, is thusly this shape. It is thusly this pattern. Okay, this hyperdimensional pattern. So if we understand the idea that what we are is beings of frequency and energy, more so than we are beings of, like, or just as much as we are beings of physicality, okay, if we understand that we're more so beings of energy though, and that this physical body is more like a husk, that it's more like a shell, that our spirit is going to move on, right? This is the whole like understanding the life and death cycle, and you have to understand all this stuff in order to understand extraterrestrials and all, okay? If we understand that we are this consciousness, then the whole idea is that by doing these sacred ceremonies that involve, say, the embodying of star systems feedback loop, or their frequencies, and we do this process here with our own consciousness, then we can go from being a 3-dimensional average human being to being a hyperdimensional hypercube shaman to a, you know, hyperdimensional shaman that's so far beyond the physical reality that we perceive with our 5 senses that physical reality is laughable. All right? And the only way that's possible is by traveling up the harmonic resonance patterns, okay? So you can't just go from here to here like that, okay? You have to work your way up, okay? You can't just go from here to here. You have to go through this process here, okay? And that's what these ceremonies are about. That's what the ancient cultures were all about, was understanding these harmonic frequencies and getting in tune with them. Okay, thusly they could expand their auric field to encompass these star systems and their understandings of reality. Okay, so how is this possible? How is it that human beings are even able to do this? Well, it's because, as I said before, we are a fractal embodiment of the universe. Our physical body is like a standing wave of and a concrescence of all reality. Okay. Oops. So what you're looking at here is something called the amplituhedron, okay? And this is something that was discovered by quantum physicists, okay? And the math of it all works out, and basically this here is like what all of reality is bouncing off of, according to quantum physicists, okay? Now, if we take this shape and we replicate it in a different way here, we see, oh my gosh, wow, you just add one here and you add another one here, and oh my God, you have the tetrahedron. Okay, so once again, this is phi, 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 all different phi's being stacked on top of one another to create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. Okay, all the while, phi in and of itself is a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. And this process of self-reflection just keeps going and going and going. And we embody that. Okay, so this is the guy right here that discovered this, Nima Arkani Hammad, forgive me. A PhD, theoretical physicist, Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton. Okay, now look here. This is the vector equilibrium, y'all. Look at that. And here, this is the tetrahedron. You see? Okay, so what we're looking at here is basically quantum physicists' way of saying that all of reality is based off of the tetrahedron. Okay, all of reality is based off of this same single mathematical structure. So essentially what I'm saying here is that this is physicists' way of proving kind of what it is that I'm saying, and that is that at the core, at the fundamental core of all things is this hyperdimensional energy. Okay, at the fundamental core of all existence is the fractal sacred geometric structure of the vector equilibrium double torus field. Okay, and it is this center here that is like the hyperdimensional energy, the hyperdimensional consciousness, the whole that is greater than the sum of its parts that creates all reality. Okay, this is like the beginning and the end of the feedback loop right here. Okay, so with that understanding, this is how it is that we as human beings, because this is kind of what we are, is like, as far as the consciousness goes, is this thing spinning over and over and over again, creating multiple different realities that we're branching to in physical time and space. Okay, and as we do this process, we are essentially embodying certain timelines. We are choosing certain levels and frequencies of consciousness that we wish to embody based on our thoughts, based on our emotions, etc., etc. Okay, so with that said, this process isn't just something strictly to humans. This is something that is going on an earth level. That's where this whole idea of Gaia comes from. Okay, because Gaia is a real being, y'all. Our earth is conscious. Okay, whether or not you know it, our earth is conscious. Okay, it's conscious. All right, just like, and this here is Kronos, this is Saturn, okay, this here is Jupiter or Zeus, okay, all of these beings are conscious beings, okay, there's a reason why our ancestors said that they were gods, okay, because they understood that these were actual beings of awareness, these were self-conscious, self-aware, hyperdimensional beings of consciousness, of like energy, on such a high harmonic scale that it baffles this little three-dimensional cube mind. Because what we're talking about is a mind like this right here. So far beyond the fifth dimension, we're talking like into like the 10th, 11th, and 12th dimensions. Okay, the highest possible octaves of physical existence. Okay, that is what these beings are embodying. Okay, so when we do damage to Gaia, when we hurt our planet, when we hurt each other, what are we doing to the universe? What are we doing to this beautiful and wonderful mother of ours? Okay, think about it, eh? Think about it. So with that understanding, what we're looking at when we talk about the gods, whether it be low frequency beings like Saturn and Kronos, or high frequency beings like Zeus and Jupiter, or Titans that are of kind of a loving, all-encompassing vibratory frequency like Gaia, okay? What we're talking about is hyperdimensional beings of this nature here, of the tetrahedron. Okay, we're talking about beings that are on like the highest possible harmonic octaves of awareness. Okay, now we as human beings are able to embody these things. We are able to embody either the best attributes of humanity or the worst attributes of humanity, and we can do so at the loving behest of our mother Gaia. Okay, now how we do that is largely up to our thoughts, our emotions, and our choices. Okay, so if we go with, you know, pride, false prestige, ignorance, anger, envy, greed. These things lead us to this type of a consciousness, this low frequency, destructive, pulling in to satisfy the self type consciousness. Okay, whereas if we go the opposite direction, if we go with the idea of renouncing attachments, acceptance of these of a spiritual master or some sort of a higher source like God. Okay, we study scriptures, we don't give in to all of our desires, we control our senses, we gain spiritual knowledge, and we essentially embody the highest possible octaves of consciousness that are available to humanity here on the third plane dimension, on the third dimensional plane. So if we comprehend the idea that essentially human beings are like standing waves of energy, conscious standing waves of energy. Oh boy. So what I'm saying essentially is that we are these standing waves of energy that can either be guided toward a perilous, storm-filled ocean, or we can be guided toward a beautiful, peaceful, pristine ocean where everything is smooth and calm and chill and beautiful, yada, yada, yada. Okay, we're talking about different frequencies and octaves of vibration in the scales of infinity. Okay, and in the fractal geometric structure of hyperdimensional reality. Okay, and we as conscious beings, through our choices, through our thoughts, through our emotions, etc., choose which reality we wish to embody, choose which timeline we wish to bring into existence. Okay, and thusly we either choose to go down the line and become less than a three-dimensional and a two-dimensional or even a one-dimensional being, basically a being that is all about self-gratification, doesn't care, doesn't understand about reality, doesn't see others as the self, etc., etc. Or we can move up the scale and we can end up seeing all things as the self. We can end up seeing reality as it actually is, that it's all this hyperdimensional consciousness, that it's all this hyperdimensional energy that is flowing through this basic sacred geometric structure of reality. Okay, and thusly we can embody these types of consciousnesses, okay, as opposed to this type of consciousness. Okay, so in the scales of infinity, we can either ascend to the highest possible peaceful planes of existence and reality, or we can descend based on the fractal geometric structure of reality, because this is you right here. This is you. You are a vector equilibrium and double torus field that is spinning and drawing timelines to it and through the feedback loop, through the fractal geometric structure of space and time. Okay? You are a being of frequency. You are a being of energy. Just as much, if not more, than you are a being of physical resonance. Okay? Of physicality. Okay? So, just continue. Further review. First dimension, second dimension, third dimension, fourth dimension, okay? Then when we get into this idea of the cuboctahedron or the vector equilibrium, and then we start stacking spheres, okay, or double torus fields on top of all that, okay? And then you spin it, okay? You get a hypercuboctahedron or an amplituhedron, which is a cuboctahedron plus time and motion, okay? So this is essentially the physics of what it is that I'm saying to you. Okay, just for those of you who are skeptics, okay? Trust me on this, there's plenty of research that went into this presentation, all right? So what this is essentially is the movement of energy through vortexes in space and time, okay? And because we are the hyperdimensional energy at the core here, and there's all of these infinite possibilities that we can branch to and through in the dimensions of space and time based on our choices and our thoughts, okay? We are basically frequencies moving through the dimensions of space and time over and over and over again down to our conscious experience of life on Earth, okay? Where this process getting funneled down over and over and over and over again, Okay, this energy moving through the cosmos over and over and over again to create this self-reflective process, to create this self-awareness that is contributing to the growth of the universe as a whole, or the universal multiversal mind. Okay, so with all that said, this is where it gets kind of interesting. Okay, as the energy moves through the feedback loop of light and information, okay, and back to itself, all right, it's all interconnecting and interweaving with one another. There's something called quantum entanglement. Okay, now quantum entanglement is basically what happens when, say, this atom here interacts with this atom here. Now, these atoms can be separated by universe. They can be, this atom here could be in the Andromeda galaxy, and this one could be here in the Milky Way galaxy. Okay, and if this atom changes its frequency or it changes its spin, so too will this one. This is called non-local entanglement. Okay, and it is possible because of the nature to the density of energy in the vacuum. Okay, what I'm basically saying is this, all right? If you were to compress all of the galaxies, all of the stars, all of the planets, all of the atoms in the known multiverse that we know, okay, the multiverse that we know, if you compress all that stuff down to like seriously a cube, a little centimeter cube of space, you would have less energy than is already present in that centimeter cube of space right now. Okay, so what that basically means is this, is that there is as much energy in a centimeter cube of quote unquote vacuum space. There's more energy in that than there is if you were to compress all of the matter in the known universe to that point. Okay, and so quantum entanglement basically unites the entire universe. Okay, so as one atom changes, so does all the other universal atoms. Okay, because they're all interconnected. So when you change, the universe changes. How about that, eh? So when you change your vibration, so too do the vibration of the atoms around you change. And so too does the reality that you live in. And then you are literally branching to and through different wormholes to a better probability and possibility wave. Okay? And as you do this, as you choose life, love, peace, compassion, as you choose these things over and over and over and over again, you end up changing your frequency field. You end up changing your quantum entanglement to the universe. And thusly, you're allowed to embody higher and higher octaves of consciousness, higher and higher octaves of awareness. And thusly, you're able to like live in more peaceful and serene universes. Because Lord knows you're not going to mess it up. Now, this idea of the feedback loop of light and information is actually something that's a very real phenomenon, especially when you understand the idea that there are like attractors and repellers in the universe. Okay, and in many cases, this is our little galaxy. This is like a bunch of galaxy fields. Okay, what we're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is like the heart of God. We're like a cell in the heart of God. Okay, and whether or not you know it, as blood flows through your heart, in and out, it's actually doing so in a spiral fashion. Okay, so the feedback loop of light and information, the whole sacred spiral, all that stuff is all the way down to the very basic fundamental structure of the way blood is flowing through your body. Okay, just like it's the way the energy flows through the heart of God. Okay, and down to the planes of earth existence. Okay, so with that understanding, and the understanding that essentially it's all quantum entangled, that the universe has infinite amounts of energy, infinite amounts, that physical reality is a manifestation of this infinite amount of energy, not the other way around. Okay, that consciousness creates matter, matter doesn't create consciousness. Okay, consciousness is not an emergent property of complex neurochemistry. Okay, complex neurochemistry is an emergent property of consciousness. Okay, and it's the same thing with our physical structure in our body and the way that they create all of these organs and stuff, create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. It's the same way with God and God's body. Okay. So essentially what we're talking about here is the movement of hyperdimensional amounts of energy. We're talking about energy like from the 12th dimension going down into the 11th, into the 10th, into yada, yada, yada. And that ends up creating like a physical fractal structure to God's quote unquote physical body. Now, what does all this have to do with aliens? Trust me, we're getting there. Lot of groundwork to be laid. You really need to understand this, and it'll all accumulate to one big grand understanding. Trust me on that. All right. So ultimately, energy is flowing from this hyperdimensional state into all these lower dimensional states, creating literally a physical fractal body of God. Okay. And this physical fractal body of God is based off of the laws of physics. It's based off of the exact same things that creates our bodies. Okay. Everything. It's all the same fractal geometric structure. Okay. And we're like little cells and spiritual cells inside the body of God. And the more we contribute, like the more we grow as a self, the more we evolve as a species, the more we contribute to the growth and the evolution of consciousness and God as a whole. Okay. On both a physical and a spiritual plane. Okay. So human beings are essentially embodying the very hyperdimensional consciousness, like I said before, of all existence. Okay, and we have the ability to have this perspective. While we're here on earth, we have the ability to have this hyperdimensional perspective of God, which is all of the known universe, basically the multiverse. Okay, you're able to embody the multiverse through these vortexes. Okay, through harmonizing your consciousness frequency with the feedback loop of 12th dimensional, hyperdimensional consciousness on the planes of the highest dimensional planes of existence. Okay, we're able to embody that. Okay, we're able to pull that frequency down all the way to the third dimension and realize that third dimension, 12th dimension, it's all the same. It's all just energy resonating at different frequencies of vibration. And that brings me to Nikola Tesla, who once said, if you wish to understand the secrets of the universe, one must first comprehend energy, frequency, and vibration. Or no, it was if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That's the quote. Little over the top there, kind of lost myself. Anyway, so if we understand the secrets of the universe are based off of energy, frequency, and vibration, and we understand that we can like move up in harmonic scales to these highest possible for energetic frequencies of vibration, that's what aliens do, you guys. That's what aliens are. Okay, is these hyperdimensional beings of consciousness that exist so far beyond their physical bodies that they don't need the physical body to know they exist anymore. And that's the whole idea behind having a physical body in the first place, is to recognize that we are, in fact, this hyperdimensional consciousness. We're like the hardware, and we're designed to perceive this software so that the software can grow and upgrade, okay? So there can be new software updates, all right? Now, this is where it gets really interesting, you guys, okay? Because now we're going to really start getting into this whole idea of aliens, okay? And this whole idea of interdimensional entities, okay? Because hopefully I've explained all that other stuff well enough to move on. So, the 12th dimensional portion of the feedback loop, let's just say that this is from the 12D going down into the 11D, okay? Well, there is a vortex here that is conscious of itself, okay? And this vortex here that is conscious of itself is kind of like this goddess type figurine here. Okay? And yes, this is where the Hindu mythologies and stuff comes from. This is where this talk of like gods and goddesses and titans and stuff like that comes from, you guys. And it's from these like massive fucking vortexes that are like not only like massively large but also infinitely small, okay? Because inner and outer space are exactly the same. Whether or not you know it, they're exactly the same, okay? So this hyperdimensional being here is actually a massive vortex, okay, that is conscious of itself, and it will not allow you into its hyperdimensional plane of consciousness unless you are of a certain frequency, unless you can contribute positively to the growth of this vortex of energy. Otherwise, you're going to be cast down back into the other dimensions until you can bring something up that is of a worthy contribution to this hyperdimensional state of consciousness. Okay, so that's the whole idea of what shamanism is all about, you guys, okay, is that we start off as a basic 3D being, and then we turn into a being that is that recognizes its own self-reflective, hyperdimensional nature. It realizes, oh my God, I'm a universe. I am a universe. Wow. The universe ends up becoming conscious of itself. And then it becomes conscious of itself in a new way when it realizes that it is a universe within a multiverse, that it is actually a part of a whole. It is not just a whole in and of itself, it is a part of a whole. Okay? And in the process, when it realizes it's part of a whole and it integrates that awareness and that understanding, like fully, grasps that fully, okay, then it ends up becoming this hyperdimensional 12D consciousness that is a multiversal being. Okay, and that's what this is a multiversal being. And this right here is almost like one of these universal beings within the multiverse that is basically saying, hey, I got something I want to contribute to this hyperdimensional plane of existence. And guess what? There's all this resistance. You see the snake there and the dragon. You got all this like chaos and like, are you fucking sure, man? Are you sure you want this? And it's like, fuck yeah, I'm sure. All right, let's do this. And this guy's coming and he's coming strong. And that ends up making this individual here on the same level as this goddess being here. Okay? This being, having accepted its own mortality, having accepted its own physical impermanence, realizes its own energetic permanence, realizes its own immortality beyond the flesh. And in the process, it ascends and ascends and ascends again and again and again and again and again. Okay? Now the thing is, you don't have to die to do this. Okay? You don't. What you have to do is you have to have what is called an ego death. Okay? And basically what that stipulates is the idea of going from the known to the unknown. And then understanding that the unknown is now known, and that the only way that the unknown, where the information from the unknown came from, was from the unknowable. Okay? And then eventually, hopefully all this is making sense, eventually the unknowable ends up becoming the unknown, which ends up becoming the known. Okay? And this is how we grow in consciousness. We go from the known to the unknown, and we learn what is unknown, and that becomes known. Right? And then this portion that was once unknown is now known. So now there's new territory that is considered the unknown that was once unknowable. Hey, everybody! Hopefully all that makes sense. So, you as an individual, you as a human being, you as an infinite spirit of God, have the capability of embodying these warrior shaman type perspectives of reality and contributing something to the collective whole that is so far beyond human imagining that only beings on this level can really appreciate what you have to offer. Okay? So, with that said, this is where we get into the idea of like gods and beings that exist throughout all of this time. Okay? We're talking about a being that has lived and embodied all of these different frequencies of vibration and is still kicking. Okay, is still aware of itself, is still trucking, still going, wow, how about that? This is really cool. This huge like feedback loop of latent information that's informing me of myself is radically awesome. All right, we're talking about beings like Shiva here, okay? Or beings like Brahma, okay? Beings like Krishna. And if you're outside of Hindu mythology, let's go to Zeus, Gaia. All right, we want to start talking Romans, we say Jupiter. Okay, what we're talking about is beings that are a whole greater than the sum of their parts on a physical scale that is so vast beyond human comprehension that they're gods. You see? Do you see? And these are aliens, ladies and gentlemen. These are aliens. Okay? When we communicate with Mother Nature, we're communicating with an alien. We're communicating with an extraterrestrial intelligence. Okay? We're communicating with a hyperdimensional intelligence. All right? Now, this is where it gets really interesting, okay? Because as I said before, we are beings of frequency, we are beings of energy, just as much, if not more, than we are beings of physicality, okay? And as energy moves through the feedback loop of light and information, yada, 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 okay, there are different energetic beings that get sent through the sun vortex and to Earth, okay, and incarnating in physical bodies, okay, regardless of whether or not this body looks like a gray alien. No, 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 that's not how it works. The archetype, the frequency field is what is the quote unquote alien, you guys. Okay, it's these frequency fields that are of different harmonic resonances from different worlds. Do you see now? Do you see how literally the whole earth could be populated with aliens and we wouldn't even know it? Because we all look the same. Well, relatively. I mean, if you go to the DMV high enough, you'll see some aliens. Trust me on that shit. So with that said, the energy that moves through these harmonic octaves of reality in these multiversal versions of reality, creating universes, okay, is what is like tugging and pulling over dominance of this planet. Okay, so what we're talking about is like star systems. We're talking about gods and goddesses battling over Earth. Okay, we're talking about alien intelligences battling over Earth. And the way that this stuff works is through frequency and vibration. Okay, so look at it like this. This is our sun and our solar system right here. Okay, and this is Sirius right here. Okay, and this is Pollux, the Antares. Okay, I think you get the idea. Okay, now all of these star systems, whether or not you know it, they all have a drastic impact on life on Earth, because these electromagnetic fields, these frequency fields, these energetic feedback loops stretch back like so much, they stretch so much deeper than what it is that's seen on the surface. Okay, so essentially what I'm saying is that our sun here could very well be being influenced by a star literally like light years and light years and light years, hundreds of thousands of light years away. I mean, that is in fact the case, because our galaxy is like created by, I mean, our sun is orbiting the galactic center, which is a supermassive black hole or white hole, whichever whichever you want to look at it, a supermassive dark star at the center of our galaxy. Okay, and that supermassive dark star is what's creating all of these other quote-unquote vortexes or stars and planets, gods and goddesses, okay? All of these different gods and goddesses, stars and planets, okay, of these different octaves and frequencies of consciousness and energy, okay? And so Sirius here, we've seen what Sirius's frequency looks like, is affecting our solar system's frequency, especially like during certain times and spaces and days and windows in the feedback loop, okay? And that's why our ancestors tried to get in tune with this star system on certain days at certain times and certain ceremonies, et cetera, okay? And it's because it's all based off of the same fabric of space and time. Okay, it's all interconnected, it's all interwoven, it's all vortexes within vortexes within vortexes within vortexes. Okay, and all depending on which vortex dispenses more energy than the other will dictate who ends up having more of a population here on Earth than another. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. All right, here we have the Draco star system. Here we have the Orion star system. Here we have the Pleiadian star system. Okay, and here we have Earth. Now, if you notice, there's all these different ley lines. This is the sacred geometric electromagnetic hologram structure to our planet. Okay, these are the frequencies, the harmonic frequencies and vortexes that create our planet. Okay, and it is through these vortexes, through these frequencies, okay, that these beings, okay, these star systems, okay, these conscious star system beings are sending their ambassadors, as it were, to be here on Earth and to spread knowledge, understanding, love, compassion, friendship, etc. Okay, so we have like a tangled web of frequencies and vibrations and everything mingling and meshing and interweaving with one another, and all of those frequencies are being dispensed through our sun and to the Earth and as human beings. Okay, So we are literally, whether or not you know it, this planet is host to many extraterrestrial species. We're talking about beings from the Draco star system. Yes, that means reptilians. And no, not all reptilians are evil, you guys. In many cases, the reptilians actually have a lot of sacred knowledge. There are perverted aspects to the reptilian mind, to the draconian mind, but that's a very, very small section of the draconian reptilian star system. Okay? The Pleiadians are a very, very high frequency, loving vibratory frequency system. Same thing with Orion. This is actually also like the warrior type system. This is where we get a lot of our warriors from. Our heavenly warriors, our angels. Okay? So, with that said, not all reptilians are bad. Okay? Just because snakes have been called evil for thousands of years doesn't necessarily mean that they are. Okay? Snakes are keepers of secrets and wisdom. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. Okay? But what's really important to grok, what's really important to understand here is that what we're talking about is the competition between different star systems. Okay, and the energetic dispensation of souls from these star systems onto the planet Earth. Okay, and the more we comprehend the idea that we are non-physical beings having a physical experience, that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not physical beings having spiritual experiences, the more that this concept will become easily assimilated. Okay, so once again. Okay, and coming back to this whole idea of the lasers and the light frequencies and the frogs and the salamanders and all that stuff. Okay, the DNA codes that are creating the physical body that we are, okay, that is going to be the same because it's Earth. All right, but the frequency field, the harmonic resonance pattern that occupies this physical body can be from a place like Lemuria, can be from a place like Atlantis, can be from a place like Alpha Draconius, can be from a place like Orion, can be from the Pleiadians, can be from Sirius, okay? And that's how this stuff works. Whether or not you know it, that's how this stuff works, okay? So if you're looking to see a gray alien, if you're hoping to God that one day you'll see a gigantic alligator or something like that, well, you gotta probably take a whole lot of mushrooms for something like that. And even then, you might just terrify the ever-loving shit out of yourself, okay? So I wouldn't recommend that, all right? If you really want to make some sort of contact with these types of divine beings, then I would recommend you seek a shaman's assistance, okay? Seek professional assistance. This isn't a joke. Now, granted, you can continue to just pray to the divine, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent creator God. And as long as you continue to do that with a pure enough heart, pure enough mind, then you'll make it. You'll get there. You will make contact with the highest divine source of consciousness. You will make contact with essentially, this type of a being or this type of a being. Okay? You will make contact. But you have to be like fucking consistent. You have to believe so much. You have to have all of your heart in it. And that isn't to say that there can't be room for doubt. Of course, doubt is the fuel of the fire of faith. Okay? But you have to have faith. You have to believe that God is listening, that God can hear you, that this hyperdimensional energy of this hyperdimensional consciousness is aware of your presence on Earth. And you know what? The universe decided, man, you know what? I got all this awesome stuff. I think I need you here too. So I'm going to put this person here. And that person is you. Hey, everybody. All right. So now we have to talk about the idea of soulmates, okay, and how all this stuff interrelates, like twin flames and all that stuff. What we're talking about here is this, okay? If you choose to be selfish, if you choose to not embody your highest divine self or something like that, and you continue to choose that over and over and over again, then you're going to get a very specific reality, okay? But if you choose to embody the highest possible octaves, the highest love, peace, harmony, yada, 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 then you're going to occupy a whole other harmonic octave in time and space. And in the process, what you do is you draw to you your harmonic counterpart. The double torus field, the vector equilibrium, okay, this is how universes are created, okay, is through the pairing of souls that know and love each other, okay, beyond the physical body, you see. We're talking about beings of frequencies, right? Energetic beings of frequency, creating a vector equilibrium, creating a new universe, universal beings within a multiverse, creating a new universe. All right. Now, interestingly enough, what we're seeing here is actually the Sagittarius galaxy, the dwarf galaxy, being swallowed up and torn apart by, yes, the Milky Way galaxy. So whether or not you know it, in many cases, some scientists believe that a lot of the bodies in our solar system were not actually native to the Milky Way galaxy, but are actually from this Sagittarius dwarf galaxy. Okay, is that the case? I don't know. The universe is conscious. I wouldn't put it past it. You know, we have histories and mythologies and stuff that kind of explain a process that happened kind of like this. If you understand the whole idea that Saturn was the first in the solar system and Kronos eats his children and all that stuff, then you know, maybe this whole idea of Kronos or Saturn coming from another world coming into the Milky Way galaxy is a very real thing. And maybe all the other planets coming in, falling in, and you know, maybe this is where Nibiru comes from. I don't know. You know, there's so much speculation. There's so much speculation, and without actually going out in a spaceship or something like that, all we can do is really do our research, read what the ancient civilizations and ancient cultures have said, and try and understand that there is this like cosmic web of all these different frequencies of light and vibration, all these different vortexes and these star systems, these gods and these goddesses intermingling and intertwining and creating something new, creating something different, creating something novel. Okay, and that's kind of this process here is like this process here being carried out. Okay, I hope all that makes sense. Now, this whole idea here of like where you end up in space and time and yada, yada, yada is the same thing for the universe. Okay, so that's why it's so important that we work on ourselves. That's why it's so important that we push forward. Okay, that's why it's so important that we evolve as individuals. Okay, and we try as hard as we can with all of our might to find the love and the universal peace within. And then in the process, our divine counterpart will be brought to us just based off of nature. Okay. So this is where we're going to get into the idea of serpents a little bit. Okay. So if we understand that all of reality is based off of energy, frequency, and vibration, and that it's these hyperdimensional timelines, essentially, that are able to be branched to and through the feedback loop of light and information, okay? Then we have to understand what this whole idea of like the shaman being encircled by the serpent is all about, okay? Because this is in Egypt, this is in Mesoamerica, okay? This is in New Zealand. It's all over the globe, you guys. This whole idea of the shaman being encompassed by either a serpent or like a jaguar or, you know, or a wolf, the animal, okay? In particular, though, we're going to talk about the serpent aspect to all this, okay? Because this serpent is actually a timeline, okay? It is a harmonic timeline of wisdom that the shaman is writing for his people to a higher dimensional realm of existence where there is life, harmony, peace, and beauty. Okay? So the snake is like a guardian for the shaman. It's like saying, no. This is my guy. This is my timeline. It exists within the hyperdimensional infinity. And this harmonic timeline is preserved based on me and me being the guardian. Okay, and that's what this whole, you know, coming back to this. Okay, yeah, goddess and the serpent. Okay, you hear that synchronicity? It's okay, Rodney. It's okay, bud. Okay, so what we're talking about here is a being, a hyperdimensional being, a shaman, or some people call them wizards, witch, whatever, warlock. Okay. These beings that become hyperdimensional in their consciousness. Okay, they go from the third dimension to the fourth, and then into the fifth, and then into the sixth, and they become a hyperdimensional being. Okay, and in the process, they understand the feedback loop of light and information. They understand the nature of reality, and thusly they embody a harmonic timeline within the fabric and the structure of the dimensions of space and time. Okay, now with all that said, okay, here on this planet, there are all sorts of this process of the, whether it be the serpent or the, like I said, it could be a jaguar. In some cases, it's a mantis. Okay, there's all sorts of, in some cases, it's a bird. You'll see the bird on top of the head. Okay, these beings, okay, are hyperdimensional harmonic octaves of consciousness that resonate so far beyond physical existence that they have to pick a medium for which to intermingle and interweave and communicate with beings on the third dimension. So they pick avatars and archetypes that are familiar, animals, okay, trusted animals, whether that be a serpent, whether that be a lion or a jaguar, a wolf or a bird, a mantis. Okay, ultimately, in most cases, they are all light beings. Okay, they're all divine harmonic octave beings of the highest resonance. Okay, that's in most cases. Okay, and we literally, you guys have all of these types of beings on this planet. Whether or not you know it, there are all these types of different beings on our planet right now. But they look human. Okay, because it's their consciousness field. It is their field of consciousness that is actually quote unquote alien, or that is from another world, you guys. Okay? So this here's the blue avians. If you know about the blue avians, you know about Corey Goode and what he's talked about and all that stuff. It's really interesting stuff. Look into that. If you haven't looked into it, look into the blue avians and Corey Goode. Okay, these are like sphere beings, beings of light that have chosen to take on the archetype of the bird or Thoth, you know. Then there's the mantis beings. These beings are highly evolved. They consider themselves master geneticists. Okay. Then you have the lion beings or the feline beings. Okay. These beings are extremely wise. They're also very benevolent, loving, and kind. Okay. They can also be very vengeful if you threaten their cubs. Interestingly enough. How about that, eh? Then there's the reptilians. Now, not, like I said, not all reptilians are bad, you guys. Yes, there are some bad reptilians. Yes, there are. We'll get into that a little bit. But there are, most of the reptilians that I've listened to, and that I know are reptilians, are wise beings. Okay? Now, there are some gray beings that are hostile. Yes, absolutely. Yes, but most of them are not. In fact, most of the time, from what I understand, when it comes to the gray beings, most of them are like cyborgs. Okay? They're like programmable life forms, programmable biological life forms, like a blend between biology and nanotechnology. Okay? Then you have things like the Nordic, beings like the Nordics. Okay, the blonde hair, blue-eyed, you know, they got the jumpsuit, you know, they come in their crafts, yada, yada, yada. Okay? These beings, in many cases, I hear they're from like the Pleiades and places like that, the Orion Nebula or Orion star system. Then there are these, the Anunnaki. Okay, not all Anunnaki are bad. Okay, what we're talking about is hyperdimensional beings of energy. Okay, and as I said before, there are hyperdimensional beings of energy that go all the way up to the highest possible octaves, you know, Zeus, Jupiter, and you got the lower octaves, Saturn, Kronos, eats his children, yada, 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 okay? All right, so what we're talking about is the polarities and the different harmonic octaves of low vibration and high vibration within the infinite multiverse in the dimensions of time and space. Okay, and all the different variations of these harmonic octaves being represented by different species throughout the galaxy, and thusly these species being incarnated here on Earth in physical vessels. Okay, and the universe is essentially working out intergalactic trade, intergalactic communication, and unfortunately, in some cases, ending intergalactic warfare here on this planet. Because if we understand that the universe is an infinite sphere whose circumference is nowhere and whose center is everywhere, then technically the Earth is the center of the universe. which means that the cosmic play of sorts is being conducted on this plane all the time. Okay, which means that all of the beings that have a stake in this universe are here right now, ensuring that the ball does not get dropped. Okay? So, with all that said, remember how I said essentially every being is a being of frequency and energy, more so than, or just as much, if not more so than they are physical bodies? So it's important to understand that on the ultraviolet side of our light spectrum, this is according to my research, okay? On the ultraviolet side of the spectrum, okay, you have the positive entities, okay? You have loving, benevolent beings, okay? And it is on the other side, the infrared side of our spectrum, that you get the evil beings, the Arconians, the evil Draconians, the evil Reptilians. Okay, and yes, there are evil Pleiadians, there are evil Orions. Okay, humans are a perfect example of the way life is all over the galaxy. That you can't just judge. You can't judge all humans by the behavior of one human. Okay. So there are Anunnaki, there are Archons that are evil, okay? And the Archons are evil. There are Anunnaki that are evil, and they are on the infrared side of the light spectrum. They are on the lower vibratory frequency. Notice the low vibe frequency here of the light spectrum, okay? And all the high frequency beings, all the loving beings are on the high frequency side of the light spectrum. And we, as individuals, are a standing wave here in the middle that is like basically caught in between these two forces, okay, that you could essentially consider angelic and demonic, okay, that you can consider low frequency, high frequency, okay, and it is these beings that have been battling it out here on Earth for millennia, and whether or not you know it, guess what? The good guys won! Woo! Yeah! That's what the Age of Aquarius is all about, baby! Woo! Okay? The good guys won. All right? The Age of Aquarius is going to be an age of enlightenment, high frequencies, love, compassion, bliss, ecstasy, joy, serenity, okay? Community, justice, freedom, truth, love, beauty. All that stuff. That's what the Age of Aquarius is about. We fucking won, you guys! Woo! Yeah! All right, and the old Draconian, old Arconian, old Anunnaki system based off of the low frequencies, based off of death and decay and fear and destruction, all that is leaving it in the past, man. It's all in the past. Let it go. Let it go. All right. So with all that said, here's how these things differentiate on like an energetic scale. Remember how I said that essentially we're talking about beings of frequency more so than we're talking about being just as much as we're talking about beings of physicality. Okay. What I'm talking about here is this. Beings of high frequencies, of love frequencies, okay, are like this here. They embody the double torus field. They embody all the harmonics of the universe beautifully and perfectly. They create the whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, that continues to expand and expand and expand its consciousness to envelop larger and larger octaves of creation, and thusly understand itself beyond further and further beyond the flesh. Okay, thusly becoming a hyperdimensional extraterrestrial intelligence. Okay, now the lower frequency beings, the ones that are on the infrared side, the Archons, the evil Anunnaki, the evil Alpha Draconians, etc., these beings are beings that are not in harmony with the universe. And so what they have to do in order to like get to this state right here, this whole and full state, is they have to prey on beings that are of this high frequency state. Okay, and they suck their energy into their energetic field until their energetic field is like this and the other person's energetic field is like this. Okay, these are called energy vampires, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths. Okay, these people are what you're looking at here. Okay, these are like the gurus. These people here are like the Jesus Christ, the ascended masters, the saints, the sages, the Buddhas, the bodhisattvas, the mystics. Okay, that's who's here. Okay, that's these people. And that's the reason why these beings always drive these beings away. Okay? All right? Because these beings are such high frequency that these beings are like, I can't fuck with that. I'm out of here. Okay? I don't want anything to do with that universe. That thing will tear me apart. Okay? Now, with all that said, moving on. We have to understand that when we're talking about beings that are like hyperdimensional, we're not just talking about beings that understand this aspect to their own consciousness just around their physical bodies, okay? They understand all the different layers outside of the physical body to the point to where they're able to go up into like the upper atmosphere, okay? You hear my niece crying. I hope that doesn't bother you. Poor baby, she's getting her diaper changed. So what we're looking at here, you guys, these are what I call organic UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, okay? This is where this whole idea of dragon beings came from, okay? This is the dragon beings right here, okay? And this is actually, whether or not you know it, there is a person on Earth that is experiencing this. Okay, this is the whole idea where the dragon bloodlines come from, is beings that are so conscious beyond their physical form and flesh that they were able to embody this massive energetic being of harmonic resonance outside the flesh and in outer fucking space, y'all. And so this is where this whole idea of the blue avians comes from, this whole idea of the sphere being alliance and all that stuff. Is what we're talking about is beings of frequency from harmonic octaves so far beyond the third dimension that they're manifesting as orbs of light in our upper atmosphere. Okay? What we're talking about here is the harmonic resonance patterns of physical beings on the planet manifesting in the upper atmospheres of our planet. Okay? We're talking about their aura, right? The whole idea of the chakras and all that stuff going all the way up. We're talking about that process having a physical effect in reality and in the dimensions of time and space. And we perceive it as like a dragon being in the sky or a light orb or something like that. Whereas the person that's experiencing this is looking down on the planet Earth and going, whoa, holy shit, dude. That's the Earth. And I'm like, way the fuck up here. Whoa, how about that, eh? All right, now, with that said, yes, there are organic UFOs that are able to outmaneuver our fighter pilots, our fighters, things that travel at Mach 2 and stuff like that, because these things are traveling at the speed of sound. I mean, faster than the speed of sound, you guys. These things are traveling at the speed of thought. They're traveling at the speed of thought. And if thought is about the feedback loop of light and information and where you are in the harmonic timelines and all that stuff, then that is the speed of thought. Okay, here, there, gone there. There, all over the sky. Yep, guess what? And now they're gone. You're tracking them, now they're gone. Okay, that's why things are the way they are with this unidentified aerial phenomena stuff. Okay, because we're not just talking about physical craft, you guys. Yes, there are physical craft, but that is like less than 1% of it. Okay, the physical craft are a response to the non-physical craft, you guys. Okay, and I'll get to that in a minute. It's important to understand, though, that what we're looking at here is organic UFOs. What we're looking at here is the amplification of the auric field and the consciousness field, the consciousness awareness field of the divine being that is responsible for this resonance pattern. Okay? Hopefully all that makes sense. So, understanding the idea of standing waves, understanding the idea of a plane of consciousness, understanding the idea that the Earth is kind of like the center of the universe in a sense. Okay? Universe is the universe is this infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. Okay? If you understand all that, you understand that essentially different beings from different star systems, different harmonic octaves, are coming to this plane of consciousness to interact and interrelate with one another. That way the universe can grow and change and evolve as a hyperdimensional consciousness beyond the flesh. If we grok that idea, then we can really, really grasp the infinite potential of the human spirit, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Because it's so far beyond the physical that it boggles most people's minds. All right. Now, our ancient ancestors understood this, you guys. Our ancient ancestors understood this reality. Did you hear that synchronicity? Our ancient ancestors understood this reality. Okay. And that's why they created all of these different massive megalithic structures, whether it be pyramids, whether it be stone circles, whether it be deep underground harmonic resonance chambers and cities. Okay, all the iconography all over the globe, it's all the same for a reason. Because there was a global civilization that understood the feedback loop of light and information, understood the nature of the interconnected nature of consciousness and spirit. They understood the metamorphosis that was happening on a moment-by-moment basis by simply living and existing and observing reality. And they understood the idea of extraterrestrial races coming from the star systems to our planet. Okay, and in many cases, they interceded and interacted with these beings at these sacred sites on very specific days, at very specific times. And in many cases, the shamans were under the influence of psychedelic hallucinogenic plants. Get over it. It's the facts, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and it's because these plants literally plug your consciousness into a higher hyperdimensional perspective of reality that allows these higher dimensional octaves of energy to be perceived beyond the five senses. Okay? So our ancient ancestors understood all this stuff, you guys, and they created literally a global civilization, both above ground and underground, based off of this understanding of harmonics, resonance, frequency, vibration, and energy. Okay, and the idea of creating the most profound metamorphosis process while they were here on this planet, the most profound spiritual metamorphosis process while they were here on this planet that they possibly fucking could. Okay? That's what you got to do. That's what we're here for. That's what we're all doing here, whether you like it or not. So whatever it is you got issues with, I suggest you work them out. See, the ancients understood the flower of life. This is the flower of life sphere under the power of the guardian lion. Interesting. Interesting. Guardian lion at the ancient imperial palace in the forbidden city of Beijing. This is flower of life in the Golden Temple in India and flower of life on a mosaic in Turkey. This is the tetrahedron in Armenian. This is Ethiopian. This is Roman. Mesopotamian, Hindu, Phoenician. You get the idea. It's because this is the very basic fundamental structure of reality. This is the amplituhedron. Okay, this is the tetrahedron. This is how reality is created, you guys. Okay? And the ancients understood that. And where did they say they got all this information from, you may wonder? I believe the term they used was star beings. Okay? So they got all this information from star beings. They got this star knowledge from star beings, from their ancient ancestors who claim to be from the stars. Okay? So what they did, because they understood all this, is on each and every one of these ley lines, that's what these are called, ley lines. Okay? These are electromagnetic points on the planet, and where these things coincide, we tend to get extraterrestrial phenomena. Okay? In many cases, this is the doorway of the gods, way down here, I think it's in Peru. Okay? This spot is right, like smack dab on the crossing of ley lines, you guys. So this is like a hyperdimensional doorway of the energy, that the feedback loop of light and information that is moving through Gaia is moving to and through in order to get back to source. Okay? So our ancient ancestors created pyramids on these places. They created ziggurats. Hey, they created ziggurats, okay? And notice the pyramids are in alignment with, wow, star systems. How about that, eh? And if we understand the energetic power that pyramids have and the way that they actually create a higher frequency octave, the the longer they exist, all right, then if you put yourself inside of one of these chambers at a very specific time when one of these star systems is pointing at that specific location, then you are literally embodying that frequency. You are getting in tune with the feedback loop of that star system and embodying it into your consciousness field. And thusly, you are embodying the highest possible consciousness available, the highest possible harmonics available in the entirety of the universe and multiverse. Okay? Okay? So that is how and why our ancient ancestors did things the way that they did. That's why they built all these, structures. That's why they have all these ley lines, and that's why they built them on all these ley lines. They had to find the ley lines. Okay? And that's how they were able to communicate with extraterrestrials on a regular basis. Okay? Because the shamans understood the way reality works. And they didn't mind being completely plastered on hallucinogens to get it. So, with all that said, how did they get in tune with this? Because it's more than just taking psychoactive plants. Trust me on that. Okay? And the way that they did it was by understanding the idea of the heart path. Okay, the idea that their heart was calling them to a very specific timeline. Okay, so this is where God-given dreams come from. This is where I have a dream that I know I was meant to fulfill comes from, you guys. Okay, it's because it's your heart path. Your heart knows the truth. Okay, and we have had a whole society of people that have been told to ignore their heart path, get a fucking job, get a degree, get a this, get a that, marginalize yourself, put yourself as a peg in this, deterministic machine that knows not of you and cares not for you. Okay, that's bullshit. All right, and that's the reason why we have a dystopia like we do. Okay, because of the mentality. Okay, what it is that we have a predominantly left brain thinking that's going on this planet. So we have a very imbalanced perspective. Okay, the left hemisphere of the brain is the logic portion, if I'm not mistaken. It's the rational, analytical, et cetera, et cetera. And we've been told to ignore the abstract. We've been told to ignore the right side, when the only way that you can get a real scope and real view of reality is by taking both eyes of Horus, or both hemispheres of the brain, and overlapping them to create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. Okay? And so when we follow our heart path, when we go with our intuition, our logic and our intuition build together. Okay, and then these two things end up working symbiotically with one another. Okay, now we can stimulate the logical side of our brains while we're listening to the intuitive side. We can stimulate the logic side and the rational side with text. Okay, with understanding what has come before us and our ancient history, the techniques, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we can also get in tune with these energies via pyramids. Okay. We can get in tune with them via shamanic plants and shamanic ceremonies, okay? We can also get in tune with them via things like tantric sex, okay? And the sex process is actually very, very sacred, and it plugs you into the creation aspects of the universe. That's why it feels so good. We can also dance our way into these states of consciousness. We can meditate our way into these states of consciousness. As I said before, we can use psychoactive plants to get into these states of consciousness. We can sing. We can play music and drum to get into these states of consciousness. We can do things like yoga or things like Tai Chi to get into these states of consciousness. Ultimately, though, it's all about the Kundalini being raised up the spine, or basically the harmonizing of all the chakras within one another to create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. And in the process, the harmonics resonate to the next level octave above the body. And then we really get into the hyperdimensional aspects to our consciousness. Okay? Then we really get into what reality is all about. Okay? So, in conclusion here, we're really coming to the end here. I hope you're still with me. Okay? The 12D hyperdimensional feedback loop of energy is creating all these 11D harmonic frequencies of vibratory resonance. Okay, and each of these little planes here is a galaxy. Okay, And each of these galaxies is comprised of billions upon billions, more than there is grains of sand on the earth, amount of stars within the galaxy. Okay? And each of those stars has planets. And each of those planets is comprised of atoms, all of which are based off of harmonics. All of these are different harmonic octaves from the highest to the lowest frequencies in the cosmos, and then back again, over and over and over again. This process, going from cosmic to quantum, and from quantum to cosmic, this is happening all the time. Okay, and it is this process that extraterrestrials have understood, dissected, understand the physics of it, have gotten in tune with the harmonics of, and become symbiotic with. Okay? This is why they're so fucking advanced. This is why they're so far beyond us, because we haven't done much of this yet. Okay? We haven't come to terms with our unity to all things yet. Okay? But that's what the Age of Aquarius is all about. Yeah! All right? That's what these high frequency beings are here for. Okay? Is to help us to understand what's actually going on here, who we are, where we come from, why we're here, and what we're doing. Okay? So as we ascend, as we as individuals end up becoming this 12D hyperdimensional consciousness, as we go from the low 3D perspective all the way up to this 12D hyperdimensional state of awareness, okay, what we're doing is we're essentially embodying the cosmos. We're embodying the cosmic mind. We are essentially mastering all of the harmonic resonance patterns, or what are called the archetypes in the year. And the more we do this, the more we master these harmonic archetypes within the year. Each of these is like a challenge and a reward at the end and the beginning of the month. Okay? As long as we keep doing that and we keep evolving, our DNA also evolves, and we become grander and grander beings of consciousness and awareness, and we go up in scale. So eventually we harmonize with the frequency of the planet. And then when that frequency isn't high enough, we harmonize with the octave and the frequency of the sun. And when that isn't high enough, guess what we do? We go to the galaxy. That's not high enough. Guess what? We go up to the multiverse. And when that's just not enough, when we know that there's more, guess what we do? We go to that 12D perspective. Home. Okay? And you can go home without having to die. It's called ego death, okay? And you can get there, like I said before, in numerous different ways, all right? Ego death is the key here, not actual physical death, okay? The idea is to dissolve the ego, the perspective of I am my body, basically, and change it to I am the universe. I am the multiverse. I am the divine. I am the Spirit of God incarnate. Okay? And eventually, when you get there, well, then you get up to these extremely high frequency planes of existence, you guys. You end up becoming a Shiva. You end up becoming a Brahma. Okay? You end up becoming a vortex of consciousness and frequency on such a high harmonic level that you end up becoming the source of your own creation. You end up becoming your own divine multiverse. Okay? Now, yes, there are beings of a low frequency. There are beings that are of this they're of like this level, except on a low frequency. Okay? There are beings, this is where the whole idea of Azathoth, or the Cthulhu and stuff like that. Okay, H.P. Lovecraft understood some stuff. All right, he understood some stuff about the darker side of things. Okay, but that also means that he might have understood a little bit about the lighter side of things. Right now, what we see in like the Vedas, okay, whether it be the Mahabharata or it be the Bhagavad Gita or something like that, what we're seeing is the battling out of like these really, really low frequency beings and these really, really high frequency beings. Okay, what we're seeing is the quote unquote warfare of these massive fucking vortexes, these hyperdimensional beings of consciousness. Okay, battling, quote unquote, battling over Earth based on the timelines that are brought to this planet. Okay. So, Coming back full circle, okay? Getting in tune with these harmonic frequencies through the sacred sites, right? Remember how I said that paranormal, ancestor spirits, life and death cycle, and feedback loop, I hope all this is kind of meshing together now, okay? Essentially what I'm saying is that whether or not you know it, you probably have some level of ET genetics in you, because your consciousness is not necessarily, quote unquote, from here, because technically we're all from source. And we're all from higher dimensional dispensations of source, okay? And in some cases, lower dimensional dispensations from source, lower harmonic frequencies, okay? But most of those beings are being purged right now because this is the age of Aquarius. This is an age of high, high, high frequencies. Okay, love, peace, truth, harmony, bliss, right? Good, right? So we go to these harmonic sites, we get in these massive pyramids, or even we just meditate on top of a mountain in front of the doorway of the gods. In knowledge, beauty, wonder, bliss, compassion, wisdom is dispensed to you. But you have to be ready for it. You have to know that the divine loves you and wants you to know the truth. And you have to not be afraid of that truth. So with that said, if you don't believe the idea that, you know, this is something that's been going on this planet for thousands of years, there's something called out-of-place artifacts. Now, out-of-place artifacts are like some of the most mind-blowing things that you can imagine, okay? This here is a cell phone that has what looks like Sumerian cuneiform writing on it, okay? This is what looks like somebody using a laptop of some sort. Maybe it could be a mirror, but it also looks like a laptop. Okay, this looks like a Bluetooth device. This looks like a fucking rocket ship. Okay, this is a handprint, a fossilized fucking handprint. Human handprint, fossilized in mud. That's like from the millions and millions and millions of years ago, dinosaur days. Okay, then we got a freaking screw here in this rock. We got pieces of metal. We got it looks like a washer or a bearing. Okay. In stone that's millions of years old. And then we got these hieroglyphics. That looks like a freaking helicopter. That looks like a submarine. This looks like a hovercraft. Okay? What we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is a global civilization that was so advanced, but it got destroyed. It got destroyed because it became too top heavy with its own hubris. Kind of like a certain society that I'm thinking about. And so it was wiped clean. Okay. With that said, our ancient ancestors understood all this stuff. Okay. And we've had a global civilization on this planet more than once. Okay. And it's all been wiped clean because it got way too crazy. Okay. It got way too top heavy with its own hubris. Okay. It lost sight of the truth. Okay. Now, let's get into these skulls, these elongated skulls, because this is really important, especially when we start talking about aliens, okay, you guys? These skulls were not elongated due to binding, okay? These skulls do not have the same type of structure to their cranium that we do, the several different plates. I think we have 3 plates on our heads or something like that, okay? These skulls do not. Okay, in many cases, these skulls have a very, very large plate here on the front of the head. Okay, and then there's a couple here in the back. Okay, now if you parallel these skulls, these quote unquote elongated skulls, with other contemporary skulls of humanity at the time, they're drastically different, y'all. Drastically different. And this right here is what happens when a human binds their skull. Okay, it just deforms their head. Okay, it does not actually give them more brain mass the way that these ancient people had more brain mass. Okay, that's where this whole idea of the ancient pharaohs comes from. Okay, and the ancient pharaonic lines. Okay, it's because they were essentially people that understood the feedback loop of light and information, and they were families of shaman that had understood this stuff for literally millions of years. Okay? Millions of years. All right. And they did this stuff where they went to sacred sites, where they went into pyramids, they consumed these psychoactive plants, they got in touch with these extremely high frequencies, these extremely high octaves of reality, of high harmonic vibration. And their bodies ended up, quote unquote, mutating. They evolved their DNA. Their DNA evolved to house these higher and higher octaves of consciousness. Okay? Now, what's really interesting is that when it comes to the pharaohs in Egypt, the pharaonic lines ended up interbreeding so much because they wanted to preserve this knowledge. They didn't want to give up any of this knowledge that their DNA had housed in it, so that they interbred with each other, as opposed to taking somebody from, say, like quote unquote the earth people. Okay, and that's why their genetics just got so deformed after a while, because it's like, dude, you're making a copy of 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 a copy for thousands of years, man. It's not going to work out very well. And so these people ended up becoming quite inhuman in some cases, not all cases, but in many. Okay, and that's part of the reason why they were wiped from the planet. Okay. Because they were not in tune with the harmonics of the universe. Okay, they had grown too ego bound. They weren't dissolving their egos, they were emboldening their egos. Okay, now if you don't believe this idea of this right here, to me, is evidence that there's extraterrestrials on this fucking planet, and there has been for millions of years. This right here is evidence to me that there has been a global civilization and probably extraterrestrials all over the planet for millions of years, okay? This stuff right here, these structures that we could not possibly fucking build today, to me, yeah, that's evidence that there was an ancient civilization here that was, you know, far more advanced, an alien civilization of some sort, from a higher intelligence, okay? Now, if you don't believe that, then look into Cydonia, okay? And if you don't believe in the idea of Cydonia and the idea that there's a city on Mars and that there's pyramids and that there's a face and, you know, all that stuff, if you don't believe that, I totally get it. Totally get it, dude. I didn't believe it at first either. Believe me. But then I looked into the math of it. I looked into the aspects, to the sacred geometric aspects to these structures. And if you understand what exactly was trying to be done here, using harmonics, using energy, using frequency, using vibration, what happened here is that they essentially tried to weaponize the fucking planet, okay? And it ended up backfiring on them. And whether or not you know it, there were actually, this is what really got me to believe in the idea of Cydonia and the idea of an ancient Martian civilization. The probes that we sent there have identified radioactive isotopes that are only created during human-made nuclear explosions, ladies and gentlemen. So that means that there are molecules, radioactive isotopes on Mars that are not present anywhere except for during artificial nuclear explosions. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. All right? There was water on Mars once. Any fucking second grader could know that. All they have to do is look at the damn poles. Okay, there's water, there's ice on Mars. There's ice on Mars. Ice means water is on Mars too. How about that, eh? All right. So there was a very, very, very advanced ancient civilization that was on Mars, ladies and gentlemen, and it destroyed itself. Okay, because it was all about power. It was all about using the feedback loop to gratify the ego, not to obliterate the ego. And thusly, these planes of consciousness were fucking destroyed. Like they should have been. Because you don't do that. You don't try to bring things into the lower frequency realms. You bring things into the high frequency realms. That's what it's all about. Because if you try to bring things down, well, then you get brought down in the process. Because it's all fractal, right? You're the center of the universe, right? So if you try to grip power, it'll just slip through your fingers. Simple as that. Okay? So Mars is a radioactive rock because the civilization that was there was advanced. They were too advanced for their own good, and they destroyed themselves. And then they brought that shit to Earth. Okay? Now, if you don't believe in the idea of, there being beings all over the planet, alien beings, I mean, if these skulls don't do it for you, if, all this stuff doesn't do it for you, if this doesn't do it for you, then look at this. This is in India, this is in Mesoamerica, and this is in Siberia. How about that, eh? Remember, beings of consciousness, beings of frequency. How about that, eh? All right, this, Mesoamerica, Egypt, Ecuador, Mesopotamia. How about that? Look at these stones that just so happen to look like they were like molded into place, fit strategically into one another, as if they were melted and smelted. Okay, look at this. This is a cave painting. Remember how I told you we were going to get back to the old gray alien cave painting thing? I think this is in Australia. Okay, and this isn't the only thing like this. There's pictures like this all over the globe. Okay, and guess what these beings were? These are beings of star beings that brought knowledge. How about that? How about that? So, we as a species have known about these phenomena, known about these beings for millennia. We have just been convinced in modern days and modern times that it's not true, that it's all bullshit. Well, that is the untruth. That is the untruth. That is the bullshit. The interconnection to all reality, the existence of multiple forms of life, the idea that life exists in all things, even rocks, is a fucking reality. And whether or not you like it, it's the truth. And we have created a dystopia on this planet because we believe and have been taught that the earth is dead, that you can own whatever land you land on. But to quote that good old Pocahontas song, what is it? Oh my gosh. You can own the earth until all you'll own is earth. You can own the earth and still all you'll own is earth until you can paint with all the colors of the wind. Now, with all that said, how does all this interrelate to, our governments and military and all that stuff? Because in many cases, these UFOs, UAPs and stuff like that, they've been seen over nuclear sites. They've been seen over military bases. It was seen in Fukushima during the meltdown. Okay, these things have been seen over military bases and all sorts of stuff. Okay, they've disarmed nuclear missiles. Okay. This is huge, you guys. Okay, because this stuff shows that this isn't just some airy-fairy woo-hoo, stuff. No, this is real. This is so real that it has the United States government, military, and most global governments involved. Okay? This is a very real phenomena that they have to deal with. So much so that it, like I said, it's disarmed nuclear missiles. Okay, and in some cases, unfortunately, some beings also armed certain nuclear missiles. So there's definitely malevolent and more benevolent beings here on this planet that are, fighting for control. Okay, and we as humanity, and our governments are kind of caught in the middle. Okay. So with all that said, how does all this stuff interrelate with like cattle mutilations and stuff like that? Well, interestingly enough, these cattle mutilations, a lot of the time they occur in large part around nuclear testing facilities. Okay, so in many cases, these UFOs, these UAPs and stuff like that, they started popping up when we were testing nuclear devices, when we were working with nuclear radiation and stuff like that. And the reason is, you guys, is because the stuff that we're fucking with, literally destroys reality on like a quantum level, like on an atomic level. It literally destroys the very fucking fabric of reality. It disintegrates the fabric of reality. And it destroys, literally destroys the human body, and it damages the energy body within the physical vessel. This is huge. We need to get the fuck away from nuclear power, you guys. This isn't a fucking joke, okay? We're talking about the existence of the fucking universe here. And we're just like, you know, flaunting nuclear weapons, detonating them here, destroying them there. Fucking Fukushima just spilling radiation into the damn ocean. Huh? Is that how you feel about your mother Gaia? Okay, so in many cases, these UFOs are seen over nuclear test sites, they're seen over military bases, and in many cases, the cattle mutilations are near areas of high radioactivity, places where there's nuclear test sites and stuff like that. And this is the fucking reason, you guys. This is the reason why these beings are like, whoa, what's going on down there? Who about that? The kids found the matches, eh? Thanks a lot, Prometheus. This here, ladies and gentlemen, is what some people are calling a genetic harvest. They're basically seeing how these nuclear radiations are affecting physical beings, not just cattle, but you know, there's all sorts of, you know, mutilations, and not just cattle, there's horses and all sorts of stuff. Okay, most of the time they're near nuclear testing sites. Okay. So, with all that said, now what was the government's response to seeing these UAPs, these UFOs over their top secret military bases? What is their response to having all of their nuclear missiles disarmed? What was their response to having some of their nuclear missiles fucking armed to the point where the people had to self-destruct the nuclear bomb so that they didn't start World War fucking III? What was their response? Well, the response, ladies and gentlemen, was the creation of certain technologies that gave them the exact same type of capabilities that these extraterrestrials had. Essentially, anti-gravity capabilities, the ability to pop in and out of time and space. Okay? Interdimensional travel, the use of vortexes, the use of stargates, the understanding of reality as it actually is, okay? So what we're looking at here is actually the declassification of the US Navy disclosing its secret space program technologies, okay? This is the TR-3B. This is the flying triangle that so many people have seen and swear to God just popped out of existence and or zoomed across the sky at light speeds, okay? This thing flies through funneling electricity through needle points to create a continuously rotating sphere of electricity and electrons, okay? And when this happens and it is put in something like an argon gas, it ends up creating like anti-gravity particles or anti-gravity fields. I'm sorry, actually no, it's particles that resonate with anti-gravity fields. And when you harness enough of these particles together, you get a large anti-gravity field, okay? And these anti-gravity fields enable these ships, these TR-3Bs, these triangles, these flying triangles, to not only be space traveling vehicles, but also underwater travel vehicles. So we're talking about like things that can go out into space and things that can go deep underwater without experiencing like the G's or the pressure of you know, the moving across time and space like in the blink of an eye, or going down deep to the bottom of the ocean. Okay? And they're able to power this device, they're able to power this machine through something called a room temperature superconductor, which basically means that they are creating like essentially, I believe it's 1 terawatt of electricity or 1 terawatt of power. Now, just to give a little bit of perspective, the largest nuclear power plant in the world is located, unfortunately, here in Phoenix, Arizona. It creates 700 gigawatts of electricity, 700 gigawatts of energy, okay? And a terawatt is like 1,000 gigawatts. Okay, I think that's what it is. The whole idea is that a terawatt is superior to a gigawatt in every way. Okay, and we're using large amounts of like a whole massive nuclear power plant to create 700 gigawatts of energy, when all it would take is seriously something about the size, like about this big, okay, a generator this big, using this this room temperature superconductor to create a terawatt of energy. And if you put this room temperature superconductor creating a terawatt of energy into a TR-3B anti-gravity vehicle, okay, yeah, I think you get it, don't you? Yeah. There's an infinite amount of power and supply that can go into this anti-gravity thing, which basically means that this thing is able to travel the solar system to other galaxies, other dimensions, other portions of the entire multiverse, portions of the galaxy that we thought were uninhabitable. Okay, like that. How do they do that? Stargates. Okay, understanding wormholes, understanding the use of anti-gravity, understanding the use of vortexes, understanding the way the laws of physics works, the way that aliens do, the way that the beings of these high-frequency, hyperdimensional realms of consciousness understand, okay? And then harnessing that understanding and then using it to propel themselves forward and into the future, okay? Now, getting into this just a little bit, I'm not going to get into full detail, but for those of you that don't know, I'm sorry to tell you, the moon is artificial. It's hollow. It is a ancient fucking spacecraft that was like literally mined out and like carved into what essentially would be like a Death Star type vehicle. Except this vehicle was not, it doesn't create its own electromagnetic portals to travel through. It was like, basically what happened is that it was a moon that was converted into a spacecraft using nanotechnology. And then they used this spacecraft and the natural portals and the natural stargates in the galaxy to get from A to B. Okay, and so it was like, it's like a travel. It was like a planet that was riding the wave of the feedback loop to a very specific place in time. Okay, and it just so happened that the Earth was where it landed. And if you don't believe the idea that the moon is artificial, if you don't believe the idea that that it may actually be some sort of an ancient extraterrestrial spacecraft of some sort, then I suggest you look into the idea that there was actually a time in our history when we didn't have a fucking moon. Okay? Yeah. There was a time in history when we didn't have a moon. All right? So, with that said, what we're talking about is our real history. What we're talking about is a history that is so ancient, that is literally millions of years old. So ancient that it boggles our minds. That it boggles our human mind, because we can't think, most people can't think that far back. But that is what the challenge is in this time of Aquarius, is to use our genes, use our genetics, tap into the feedback loop of light and information to recall our fucking history, our true history, you guys, our real history. And it's in our DNA, man. It's in our DNA. Okay? It's in our DNA. Okay? And now, with that said, the creation of portals is something that isn't just local to, say, sacred sites like the Doorway of the Gods in Peru, okay? Whether or not you know it, and I hope I'm not going to step on any toes here, but our governments and mostly, actually, it's more like our corporations, our private corporations that are, protected by the government, they discovered how this portal type technology works through energy, frequency, and vibration. And they were able to create artificial wormholes, artificial stargates, using energy, frequency, and vibration, using their understanding of electromagnetism and the way that reality works to create like doorways, like to other worlds that you could walk through. Okay, so you're in this world here and you just walk through a doorway. Now guess what? You're in this fucking world over here. Oops, hey. All right? And whether or not you know it, this is real, you guys. This is real. But there's a reason why the government doesn't want you to know this shit. Because it'll totally blow your fucking mind. And there's no way half of you will even believe it's true in the first place. You're also consumed in your television programs and your social media to understand and care about the truth about reality. Hear that synchronicity? Is that true? I certainly hope not. I certainly hope not. But for many people, for the majority of humanity, it kind of is. And that's what the Age of Aquarius is about, is the awakening of humanity, the awakening of our collective consciousness, of our 100th monkey consciousness to this reality. So with all that said, what I'm saying here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are a standing wave. We, in effect, are an extraterrestrial race. Okay? We are a being here on this planet, a physical being that is housing a hyperdimensional consciousness from another world. Okay? And the more conscious of this fact we become, the more we scale up in the harmonics of vibration, and we embody higher and higher octaves of the feedback loop of light and information, to the point where we become a cosmic being of light beyond the physical flesh and form, where we actually become an alien intelligence like we started out in the first place. I'm Yellowstone Wolf, and I certainly hope this video has helped you to understand it. And remember, knowledge always overcomes power. Thank you for your time.